But this morning, I want to share with you why I worship. I worship because it's my job. It is my job, but it is also your job. I worship because it was what I was created to do, and it's what you are created to do. Long before I was a part of the worship ministry at Seacoast in a staff capacity, I knew that worship was going to be a foundational part of my life. I remember in the early 90s attending a worship conference and having some people gather around me who I did not know, and they began to pray over me and call things out in my life that up until that point had just been quiet, secret conversations between me and the Lord. And they began to pray things over me like pastor and leader and anointed for worship. And hearing those things really caused courage to rise up in my heart, to actually live out what I knew in my heart that I was created to do. And although I do sense His joy when I have the opportunity to stand here and lead worship and sing songs, I am learning that there are other things that are worship as well. And I can sense His presence in those things too. Things like changing diapers and doing a load of laundry and teaching in a first grade classroom. It's just the day-to-day, whatever is in my hand at the moment kind of things. It's all worship. And if I let Him use it, all the normal can express gratitude for a life that He's given me as I give it right back to Him. So I'm going to take you to the beginning at the creation, to an account in Genesis that's helped me understand what worship is all about off the platform and understand why I know that we are all created to worship. Genesis 2:7 says, "One day, the eternal God scooped dirt out of the ground, sculpted it into the shape we call human, breathed the breath that gives life into the nostrils of the human, and the human became a living soul." Every day since that moment, man has been breathing back to God the breath that He breathed in us. Our very living is meant to be an act of worship. So we sing this song, it's His breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to You only. And the key word there is that little word, so, because it means that we have to respond. God breathed into us, so our response is spending all the breaths after that first one, breathing back to the one who created it. Romans 12:1 in the Message puts it like this. So here's what I want you to do, God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life and place it before God as an offering. You're sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life. There is no greater way that we can glorify the Lord, which is just really a fancy way of saying making Him bigger, than to do the things that He created us to do, which is to worship Him with our lives. And in doing so, we are showing a world that needs Him so desperately what it looks like when we choose to obey Him in the way that we were created, which is to worship, to breathe back. 1 Corinthians 12, Paul talks about how the physical body works and how that compares to us as believers. That just as a physical body needs an eye and an ear and a hand, and we can't all be a body full of elbows, the body of Christ also needs all the parts, that's us, to fulfill God's kingdom right here on earth. Verse 18 reads, "This is where God comes in. God has meticulously put this body together where He places each part to perform the exact function that He wanted." There are 8 billion people on earth, and He sees your heart in 8 billion different ways. Your specific arrangement of gifts and talents and expression of those, plus your DNA, is unique to you alone. There is no one on the planet at this time that has that. No one can worship and make God bigger in this world like you can. And no one can worship and make God bigger in the world for you. Only you can worship God the way that you can. And according to verse 18, if you don't use those gifts that He's given you to glorify Him, it's almost as if there's a little gap in the kingdom where your specific gifts are supposed to be expressed. It's His breath in my lungs, and it's my job to breathe it right back to Him in only the way that I can. Backing up, verse 7 says, each believer has received a gift that manifests the Spirit's power and presence, and that gift is given for the good of the whole community. So it's actually our responsibility, as well as a kingdom need, for us to operate and utilize all of our gifts in the kingdom, not to benefit ourselves, but to benefit the rest of the kingdom, which is each other. So, if that's the case, we have absolutely no need to compare ourselves to each other. Isn't that amazing? All we have to do is breathe our lives back as worship in only the way that we can and have been created to do. It is the ultimate you be you in the best way possible. So practically, what does that look like? In your work, you're created to worship with every creative idea and plan. Students, you're created to worship as you study and learn. Parents, you're created to worship as you guide your children, your families. Seacoast, you were created to worship right here as we gather together with a holy roar that shows the world we still have breath. Let's join those who for thousands of years have breathed back their lives, seen and unseen, in grateful response to their Creator, and fulfill our purpose to worship. It's His breath in our lungs. How are you going to breathe it back?